talk about fronting. Yeah, I want to talk about people who front. I want to talk about people who front. I just don't like the front. I just don't like when people front. Just be straight up. If you wasn't woman enough, or if you were talking about things that you really didn't believe in, then you need to own it.
Of course you know this woman was not looking in the mirror when she was going on talking about people fronting and making up stories and what all. Which is why pretty much I've been going through this whole thing for as long as it's been going on, to essentially just let it be known that not everybody's buying her BS anymore. And thankfully, it's beginning to show more and more that with each and every step that we take to expose this fraud and this charlatan, that any support that it might have had at one time is fast and rapidly eroding, so that all that it has left now is just this tiny little cabal that just essentially daisy chains one another to keep it all tight and nitpicked, and because they have issues. Now, I'm not going to go and swipe and talk about launching the type of ad hominems that they would talk about, but clearly these are people who have personal self-esteem issues, and the only support that they can get anymore is with one another who have similar types of issues, and they relieve themselves of some of that tension and some of that frustration by projecting off onto other people, and in so doing, when they get hit back with the retaliation, they cry foul, they want to scream and holler that they're victims, and that bad mean people are coming and they're attacking them for no reason, that they're stalking them, that they're threatening them, that they're doing all these things. And it's like an endless loop-de-loop on a Mobius strip that just seems to be a never-ending cycle. And so it wasn't too very long ago that a dear friend of mine had asked me, as a result of seeing all of this develop all the way from its very inception on up to its present state, and they're like, why? Why do you keep going after them? Why do you keep calling them out? Why do you keep challenging them like this? Don't you realize that they're not going to change? That no matter how often you keep calling them out, or no matter how often you keep confronting themselves with themselves, that they're not going to step back, they're not going to readapt their situation, they're not going to do any mea culpas, they're not going to apologize for anything, they're going to keep calling themselves the victims, they're going to keep trying to twist and distort and make crap up, they're still going to be what they are. So why do you keep going after them? Well, let me explain why I keep going after these frauds and charlatans. Imagine, if you will, that there's somebody that you know and that you can actually document and verify is a career burglar and a career robber that just goes around stealing valuable merchandise from all different people, and then goes around to all the various different pawn shops presenting its stolen wares and getting compensated for the stolen goods that it presents to the pawn shops. Now, some of these pawn shops know that what they're doing is dealing in ill-gotten goods, but because it works to their benefit, they gain something out of it, they are agreeable to continue on that sort of an arrangement. So in essence, they don't care as long as it does them good, as it helps them in some sort of a way. But the vast majority of pawn shops out there that this career robber burglar interacts with or tries to interact with are ignorant to the fact that this person is dealing in stolen goods. And so what you have is essentially a crying voice saying, I know you. I know your game. You don't fool me. You might be fooling a lot of other people out here. They might not be hip to what you're about, but number one, let it be known, I've got your number. We know each other. I know your BS, you know your BS, and you know that I know your BS. So, all this little dealing and wheeling that you do at all these different pawn shops and everything, I'm going to confront you with yourself. It's just to let you know that not everybody is taken by your connivery, if that's a word. And when I confront you with yourself, I'm going to do it within as much earshot of anybody and everybody as I possibly can, just so that anybody else you think about possibly dealing with, they'll have it in their mind to know, hey, wait a minute, let's find out about this person's character. Is there any legitimacy behind the accusations that were launched against this person? Are they really what this person getting up in their face accusing them of claims that they are? And then, of course, the bigger picture is to make sure that all the pawn shops know, hey, this is this person who's going to try to come in, who's going to try to push off some stolen goods on you, who's going to try to push off some shoddy merchandise or some other ill-gotten thing to make it seem like they're coming to you, doing you a favor, or they're doing legitimate business to you. These people are criminals, they're crooks, and all the stuff that they're dealing in, every single bit of it is stolen or ill-gotten merchandise. And not only am I going to tell you that it's all ill-gotten, stolen goods, but I'm going to show you the evidence, the absolute proof that validates my accusations against these persons, that anything that they bring to your countertop is going to be illegally gotten in some sort of kind of way, and I want you to protect yourself. So when they come to you with this big smile on their face, or with this sob story about how they have to trade in this, that, or the other because they got to take care of their sick grandma, or whatever little BS spin that they're going to put on you in order to win sympathy or praise or accolades from you, just let it be known, these are the tactics that these people use, because this is what they're dealing in. They're frauds. They are not legitimate business partners. Avoid them. Now, in a situation like that, if that were a real life situation where I could go to each and every individual pawn shop and say, hey, I've got verifiable evidence right here that will prove to you who and what this person is and what they're dealing in, those pawn shops would actually appreciate the fact that I'm giving them the heads up. But now we have a situation sort of like that in this whole little cyberspace beef that we've got going on here. Instead of a pawn shop, we've got someone who's essentially, for lack of a better term, a shit starter. She puts on this good little front talking about Afrocentric issues, or talking about how black men and black women can't get along, and she's essentially she's a spin-off of another set of panties that she's always got her nose stuck up and sniffing up behind. But we'll get to that in a little bit later. But she puts on this little pretense talking about how pro-African American and pro-black and Afrocentrist and unity and harmony and trying to help black men and black women get together or whatnot and blah blah blah. Sounds good on the surface, doesn't it? But then anybody dares challenge them, and it doesn't even have to be a direct assault saying, hey, I'm calling you out as a fraud or a phony. You don't even have to do that. Just be disagreeable. Just find a point, any point to disagree on, and you watch how quickly the dainty little waif turns into a frothing mouth demon. See, this is the cover that they wear. They try to put on this little act, this little show that I'm so positive, I'm so righteous, but in actuality, they're actually lying in wait for somebody to trip their trigger. So that way they'll have an excuse to go after somebody. And then in going after somebody, they're expecting that, oh, I'm just an innocent little girl anyway, so I can just launch whatever I want to and I'm not going to get any ramifications from it whatsoever, until they come up against somebody who doesn't lie down and just allow themselves to get walked over, and then retaliation city. And then what happens when they get retaliated against? Woo-hoo! They hit me! They're stalking me! They're threatening me! They don't leave me alone! They're obsessed with me! And yet, as I explained in the previous upload, which I entitled How to Annihilate a Liar, I went through the 4 guaranteed ways to do just that. Now, some of you may have recognized that I had given a parenthetical subtitle to that as History Lesson Part 2. Which probably raises the question, well, then where's Part 1? Well, Part 1 is in, shall we say, a safe deposit box, let's say. Because each and every time I kept trying to upload Part 1, these frauds would constantly keep going after it, keep shutting it down, because as I said, with agenda frauds, the last thing that's allowable is for truth to stand on its own and to stand unharassed. So what's going on now is that with the original outline that I had laid out, this private series, and of course the one preceding it, which is how it all got started, shows not only the genesis point but also the progression to where, why, and how this whole thing blew out of proportion, how it's just kept spreading. But in this we detail the first 3 of the 4 guaranteed ways to annihilate a lying fraud. We reviewed the lie or the accusations. Number 1. We challenged and explained the lie. Number 2. And we presented the death knell, essentially, the nail in the coffin, if you will, which is what really led to the outrageous and the unrelenting attack to make sure that everything got ripped down so that nobody could get to see it, was because I presented the documented evidence. Everything. Email exchanges, point counterpoint, vocal and typewritten, timelines, everything, you name it. There was absolutely positively no way to weasel out of the fact that not only were these people the ones who started the BS, but they were also the ones who were insisting on keeping it going, and in keeping it going, they were insisting on twisting and distorting, making stuff up, taking things out of context, trying to shift timelines around, trying to do all this little manipulation, and still always trying to bring it back around. It's like, oh, we're being harassed, we're being stalked, we're being bullied. Why are they so obsessed with us? We're trying to help out, we're trying to make things good and positive, and they're just coming because they're just haters and they're just trolls, and they're YouTube, get them off my back. They won't sit down and shut up when I kick them in the groin and walk all over them. Instead they want to get back up and they want to fight back, and that's not fair. So that's essentially where this little history lesson came from. And as I kept explaining, It's like, look, if you want to know where it all started, how it started, why it progressed, why it's continuing to go on, and how it can be brought to an end effectively, this is where you have to go. It'll detail every bit of it, but of course, it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing that I've been saying this past month now. Nothing is different because it's all the same, because the story does not change. And the reason the story does not change is because I'm telling the truth. Unlike these frauds and these clowns who have to keep reworking everything and retwisting everything and remanipulating and remolding and reshaping everything, that at some point they lose track of where they were, from one moment to the next moment. And I like Judge Judy. And Judge Judy has a very simple basic thing that she says that can apply in a situation like this. If you tell the truth the first time, you won't have to remember what you said earlier. That's why everything that I say on this whole issue has remained consistently the same, because I'm not making shit up out of my ass like they are. I'm not trying to make myself look like the innocent poor put upon, even though I am, granted, but still, I'll acknowledge my part in this. You started this beef back up after a whole year. Yes, I did. But did you listen to the explanation as to why? Because I explained it in perfect detail. Just because I lay off your ass for a little while doesn't mean I lay off your ass completely when you're still out there dissing me. That does not go. And so, like a herpes virus, like either or both of these people are infested with, I just make it plainly, clearly known, look, just because it's in dormancy, just because it's in remission, doesn't mean it's gone away. It's just going to take the right conditions for it to come straight out and essentially cause you some pain and discomfort again, let's say. So, that's their whole little issue now. They're still trying to make it seem like they're so innocent and so pure and so pristine, and this Kara Cuntbreath is the main ringleader of this whole thing, because see, actually she got started off by sniffing up in the crotch of ISayThisWithScabies, who decided that she wanted to get the ball rolling. But even she, after a while, kind of started to figure out, it's like, look, there's only so far that we can go with these folks before I don't have any ass left at all. So she kind of understood that she needed to reel herself back in. She still hasn't come up straight off and essentially apologized for all the roles that she played and everything, but at least she's showing by her actions that there's only but so far that you can go with trying to slander somebody, and especially if you're slandering somebody who refuses to allow themselves to be slandered. But Kara Cuntbreath, she never understood this. She still doesn't understand it. She's probably never going to understand it. But so, just like calling out the robber and the career criminal who goes out to all these different pawn shops looking for something of value and looking for support and looking for sympathy, she gets called out on her BS. And we just say, look, this is who this person is. This is how she operates. This is what to look out for. Don't trust the smiling face. Don't listen to all those little make-believe stories and all this little embellishment and everything. When you want to know exactly who this person is, let me take you right straight to the core and explain it for you. And a lot of people don't want to hear the explanation. And so I figured, well, okay, I'll just let them bury themselves then. So all I gotta do is just keep coming after them, keep coming after them, keep coming after them. Where they screw up, I straighten them out. Where they lie, I tell the truth. Where they distort and twist, I set things right back on the straight path. And when they launch their ad hominem attacks, I say, I gotcha. Because when you've got nothing left, when you can't solidly support your argument, and all you've got is to throw ad hominem attacks and some of the nastiest, vilest, most vicious ad hominem attacks, with nothing else backing you up except to scream and holler, and then of course still crying victim, crying victim, crying victim. But that's why I say, I gotcha. And oh, by the way, since you're so interested in launching ad hominem attacks, let me show you how it's really done. And so I pick on your weak points, the things that you're most self-conscious about, and I slam your head with them and piss you the hell off so that you do nothing but keep coming after me with more empty ad hominem attacks. Just keep exposing yourself. That's the way I operate. And my whole point is give them enough rope, as the old saying goes. I'll let them hang themselves. And so, as I said in Superman vs. the Fugtastic Four, I'm vindicated. Because now they've fallen right into my hands, and they've done exactly what I was waiting for them to do, to lose their credibility entirely. They have nothing left except each other. And all the while, still tears streaming down their face, they're still crying like their little victims. And nobody is, because they just keep coming after me. We didn't do nothing to nobody. Well, well, well. Remember what I said? You let people talk long enough, eventually they'll tell you who they are. Well, I'm going to share with you a little PM that Kernel of Wisdom shared with me, which she got from somebody who not only we're both subscribed to, but note in the PM that this person who was essentially trying to stand the middle ground, if you will, not trying to take sides in this whole thing, but finally came to a realization and an understanding as to why this whole beef-tastic thing just keeps going on, and why it's progressing, and why it just keeps blowing out of shape like it's been doing. Because they keep exposing themselves. Now, for all the words that I've ever said in exposing these clowns, this sums it up nicely, because this exactly shows you precisely what I've been telling you about these frauds and charlatans. This is how they operate. They don't just become innocent victims for no reason at all. They are into stirring up trouble. That is their whole MO. That is what gives them validity. If it were not for this, they're lost in the wilderness. So they have to do things in order to... And here's somebody that not only Colonel and myself were subscribed to. In fact, I think I subscribed to this person before Colonel did. But be that as it may, it also turned out, as I explained to Kara Vulva Liquor, that this whole thing about me stalking her, why y'all stalking me? As I explained, look, the internet is a big place, and things that interest me, chances are, might interest you too. They might interest me more from a position of reality, and maybe more for you to see how you can stir up some trouble. But the fact is that, look, just because you're subscribed to somebody and I happen to be subscribed to the same person does not mean you're being stalked. It just means I gotta share space with your fugly ass. But that's essentially what it comes down to. But see, here it is, straight out of the mouth of somebody whose identity I'm going to leave out of this, because I don't want to pull this person into this whole mess and have them become another target. So it just states it right there in plain, simple English. You can read it for yourself. This is what I have been saying this whole entire time about this fraud. About this network of frauds, I should say. And it seems to be expanding now, because now there's a new issue that seems to be coming out of the little mist now, that it seems like it's going to be another little daisy chain party with a few new members, apparently. So again, this is how these people earn their validation. And so when anybody else earns validation on some honorable grounds, it gets called anything from black woman bashing to oh, you're just trolling for cyber dick, or whatever the case is, because they can't get any kind of legitimate support themselves because they know they're on some BS, and they know that nobody's going to ride them on their BS unless they're such masters at the BS that they can hook a few unsuspecting ones in until they get the wake-up call from somebody like the General or somebody that says, hey, you're being played. And then they lose that support network, and so they gotta come running after me. You're stalking me, you're terrorizing me, you're threatening me. So, here's this person's words. In plain, simple English. Did I lie? So, to get back to why I labeled the last upload Part 2 and why I'm labeling this one Part 3 of the quote-unquote history lesson. Because if you recall in my previous upload, I talked about the four things that are guaranteed to annihilate a lying fraud. The first three were laid out in the original beef, if that's what you want to call it, where we went through all of that, confronting the accusation, challenging it and setting it straight, and presenting documented evidence proving the point. But in the original series of uploads, I didn't have the fourth element that was required to finally and completely shut down a lying fraud, which, as I explained in the previous upload, requires witness testimony. And as I did in the last upload, I'm going to replay some audio from, again, what was submitted as a private video message, this one to Sly Lady 81, explaining to her, after her concern for all that transpired as a result of this thing, why my original General channel got shut down. So, with no further ado, listen and learn. Man talk and hold him accountable to whatever issue it is that you have with him or his perspective. Don't go way off in left field somewhere and just try to run some bogus stuff on him just so that you can shoot him down or whatnot. And this is what this whole caramel thing was about. This whole thing just got started because of the fact that she had some kind of beef with Colonel. I didn't even know what the heck it was about until I started picking up on it, and because you know how we do, we track each other's movements and stuff, or at least we used to be able to back during the old system. You know what this new garbage is now, it's anybody's guess. But I noticed some of the conversations. I just decided, well, let me see how she's handling herself, because like I said, she can pretty much handle herself. She doesn't really need me in her corner all the time. But this caramel wench decided to just go all out and trying to rewrite history. And this was the thing that really irritated me with her is, lying and slandering is one thing, but when you try to backpedal and you try to distort what you yourself had actually said or what you yourself had actually done, and then try to throw that out there so that you keep trying to make yourself look like the bad guy, the good guy, and you try to make somebody else look like they're the ones who are bullying and attacking and whatnot. I just couldn't stand quietly behind it, and Colonel kept trying to rip me a new one. It's like really let me handle it, just let it drop. And I'm like, no, somebody's smearing our character, both yours and mine, because the fact is that rather than just doing what she did and at least being honorable, not making any kind of commentary about it, as I said, look, if you wanted to make a comment about hey, ha ha ha, this is real funny, and just let it drop, I wouldn't have had jack to say. Or if you wanted to make a comment and saying, ha ha ha, yeah, that's funny, but just for the record, I've interacted with these people before, they're not the same person, and then just let it drop at that, fine. but she had to go out and act all pretentious trying to schmooze up to somebody just to earn a little more cyber creds, I guess, with certain types. And she was giving the impression that she was in full agreement with what was all going on, and so Colonel called her out on it, which I thought was justified. But even then, I said, look, I'm not getting in on this. That you guys duke this out. But when she brought that reminder up saying, like, hey, in case you forgot, you did say this, you were co-signing this little fraud and charlatan over here, and you think nobody's going to step up to you about that? And even then, I just like, okay, fine. I'll just drop my little needling comment just to poke her a little bit. It's like, hey, be careful about what you say about the things that you've said and done in here, because people are keeping track. They're watching what you're doing, whether you realize it or not. And I was just going to let it drop at that and just let her and Colonel of Wisdom have their little cat fight and just, maybe kick back on the sidelines, sip some iced tea and just, enjoy the fireworks, as it were. But Caramel had to extend that whole thing out and just had to blow this whole thing out of proportion. And I was like, okay, I'm not standing quiet anymore, because you've followed me long enough. You know how I really get when somebody comes at me all wrong and they start twisting my words out of context, or they start trying to manipulate things to try to make me out looking like I'm cyberbullying somebody or anything this. And the worst side of me tends to come out that way, or the more passionate side, I should say, because I don't consider it really a bad side. In fact, I just wish more people would actually, plant their foot down when somebody comes at them wrong, trying to smear some sort of lies and do all sorts of character assassinations. So I said, hey, if you get to that point and defend your character, because this is why. Not to want to turn this into a political discussion, because really I don't care about that garbage. But if you look at the history of the conflict between conservatives and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, I'm sorry. Liberals have always maintained this attitude of, well, let's be the better person, let's just take the hits, and let's just not play the game, and let's just go be the better man, and not get into these back and forth cat fights. But you're not learning from history. What do they say? The sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And so they keep playing this game of, well, let's just talk with them logically and rationally, and just point out the facts, and they'll realize that they're wrong, and so they'll start playing nice. And I'm like, no, you're dealing with a mindset of evil here. They're not about ready to let up on you. The more that they see you just backing away and remaining quiet and not defending yourself, you're only giving them more ammunition to keep coming after you. And so this is where a lot of people really disagree with the way that I handle myself in here, because I'm trying to let them know, it's like, look, history is the best teacher. When somebody comes after you and attacks you, if you let it slide and you don't try to defend yourself in any sort of a way, all that's going to do is it's going to keep encouraging them. So you need to step to them regardless of the consequences. And so when I was coming back at Caramel, I knew I ran the risk of getting my channel deleted, especially after I saw how much her whole tactics were at starting up stuff with just different people, like the latest thing with like Long Locks. You got this woman just PMing him, just for the simple fact that he's making a comment here and there on somebody else's video, talking about, hey, this man's coming out with all sorts of truth and slamming this broad's butt, and her whole response is, well, I'm just going to start sending you nasty private messages, and I'm going to get you shut down. And I'm like, what motivates these people, really? Why? Like I said, if I believed in this whole black woman bashing thing, I would expect nothing else than to see a whole gaggle of black men just coming together and saying, let's just target these black women's videos and let's just shut them all down and get them all deleted and everything because they're talking on some feminist bull and blah blah blah. And yet the only people I ever see doing that are these bitter, angry, vitriolic, just old, busted and broken, dejected, lonely and alone black women who so hate black women that they will not only sabotage black women in their relationships, but they'll actually try to destroy the image and character of black men just so that these young black women who want a decent black man will become so disillusioned with the quality of black men out there. And granted, you know, the image of black men out there leaves a whole hell of a lot to be desired. But as I explained in this sort of like my parting shots, which I'll be asking the Colonel to upload on her channel while I take this hiatus, because at this point I don't really know what I'm going to do as far as trying to reestablish that channel or not. But as I explained in that commentary, I said, well, hey, you know, your problems with black men, all these things that you're talking about, they're legitimate. Nobody's denying that. But the question is, why are they like that? And as I tried to explain, you know, you're familiar with my Kid Brother channel, so you're familiar with what is now a 4-part series. It began like, what was it, like, it was at least 6 parts, right? But I think it might have been as many as like 8 parts, which I condensed down to like 4 parts. And you know, that was the same thing I said when I did that rebuttal against I Say This With Love, where she was talking about, well, we're looking for solutions, nobody's offering any solutions. And I was like, you know, hey, Kid Brother is watching, here's this 4-part series right here, here's this interview that I did with my mother, who's speaking on a lot of the same issues, talking about the same problems, talking about how to fix the problems if we really want to fix them. Here are some uploads I did on General Backlash that shows, you know, hey, if you just focus on some of these things and turn off your emotional switch like Lieutenant Colonel Data, and just like just look at things objectively. Realize here's where the problem is. Once you get beyond all the flame wars and everything that's going on out there, and you just listen to what the brothers are saying. This is why I was telling everybody, is like, it took me a long time to warm up to Sergeant Willie Pete, because he just was so bombastic, and to think that he rubbed off on me like that. But as I explained before, he kind of made it cool for me to realize that, look, I can be passionate and emotional about this, where I don't have to put such a damper on my passion and on my feelings, and still get the message out. And so maybe that's why not to say that I agreed with absolutely everything he said, because of course not. I mean, you know, man comes out of left field sometimes. But I just said that if you would switch off your emotions and just listen to what he's actually saying, stop listening to the tone, or stop going all knee-jerk every time you hear something that just sparks you the wrong way, but just take the time to listen, hear exactly what the entire message is. You might find out that he might be actually onto something. And so I kind of presented myself the same way. It's like, look, you don't have to like my delivery if you don't want to, but at least understand the message, understand the whole point of the whole message, and so that's the thing that gets through. That's the thing that alerts you and that wakes you up. And so one of the things that I always did was like, look, if anybody's really paying attention to anything that I'm saying out here, if I'm bashing anybody, I'm an equal opportunity basher, because I'll slam anybody who needs to be slammed if they're on some BS. I've done it with men, I do it more with women, and I do it more with black women. But that doesn't cancel out the fact that I'll go after white men, I'll go after these MRA, men's rights activists, I'll go after feminists, I'll go after black, I'll go after white, I'll go after whatever the hell is riding on some BS. Because I want to see us all on some sort of a level playing field, and getting off of all these emotional kicks and what. So that's why I tell everybody that I'm in a unique position where I get the stinging missiles of attack from everywhere. You know, I don't have a camp, so where I'm an identifiable enemy of any particular group. I'm like the everyman as far as being the target of attack and of assault, is because of the fact that at at every little point on myself, there's a target that somebody's aiming for. No matter who it is. And so that's why it's a very lonely place to be at, which is why I was telling Colonel of Wisdom, like, look, if you really want to do this, understand what you're setting yourself up for. This is what you're going to have to deal with, because I know how you operate in here. I've seen what you've done, as far as like your interactions over at Gen X and here on YouTube, as far as your text comments when you weren't producing videos and everything. So I see what you're about, and that's one of the reasons I gravitated toward you, as far as wanting to try to take you on and saying, hey, what do you think about us just having a little online partnership to where we can kind of like establish like our own little Sarge and Captain Solo thing, or like those little partnership things where every so often you might make a video together or something, or you just might go do your own thing and then just kind of like have each other's back where somebody steps out of line or something. But I said, if you're going to do this, though, understand that you're going to be subjecting yourself to the same vitriol that I've subjected myself to, and even more so because of the fact that you're a black woman who's calling all these wayward black women out on their hogwash and on their BS, on the fact that they're nothing but, as International Booby was saying, that they're just double agents. That these black women are black women's absolute worst enemy, because they're not about trying to help black women. They're about trying to hinder them and about trying to destroy them and to suppress them and to keep them from gaining any happiness, because these old bitter crones realize that they did it the wrong way, and so misery loves company. So rather than just saying, hey sister, look at me, look at our situation, look at what we've done to ruin our lives, don't you go that same path. You do right, you'll be the good, honorable, shining example. You be that positive force in the African American community, which will actually help rescue it back from the precipice. Because as I said numerous times, the power to rescue the African American community does lie with the black woman. Even though black men are ultimately responsible for the situation, we're weak. And the reason we're weak is because we're still waiting for cues from black women, and black women are not understanding that, or even if they are understanding it, they're like my mother said, they're satisfied with being satisfied. So it doesn't matter that we're in the absolute worst dejected state of anybody else in this whole hoo-ha, but they're just satisfied with the fact that, hey, they don't care that they're on the bottom or that we're on the bottom. Just as long as it continues to promote their one-up-womanship, as it were. That this whole, I'm the queen, I'm the goddess, and we're the backbone of the community, and our men are just, they're not stepping up, they're not doing anything. But of course, as soon as a man does step up and tries to do anything, then he gets smacked the F down, or he gets called weak, he gets called punk, or he gets called acting white, or any of these number of things. So it's a power play, and I recognize that, and we all recognize that. They can just recognize, like, hey, not everybody's going to buy your BS. Okay, so I so did not intend on having this thing go all off into this whole tangent and everything, but I'm just going to get right to it. I'm going to read this PM that I was trying to save for you, that I was trying to send to you. But like I said, since I wasn't really keen on you reading so much, I just decided I'll just go ahead and I'll just read whatever I had typed here, and just let it speak for itself, I guess. So, quoting, regarding the deleted account. Hello yourself, cutie. Yeah, well, don't fret about it too much. Just as I was telling B-Val/Colonel, I knew I had the best chance of tasting dust this time, I should have said this time around, than any other. And as I had explained to her on a few occasions since we've been interacting, I'm extremely surprised that it took so long for any of my accounts to be shut down like this. But it seems that I had happened to come against an opposite-gendered reflection of myself, i.e. a new kind of crazy, as Ms. Caramel described me. So even as I was trying to tell Ms. 0% to make sure that she knew whom and what she was going up against when she started coming at us with slanderous diatribes and personal attacks, I had failed to follow my own counsel in this flame war. As a result of not knowing how far out on a limb I was going, even though everything I had been producing up to that point, except for a couple of tit-for-tat blood pressure-raising personal swipes to give it a dose of its own medicine, everything I had said up to this point was the absolute truth, using Ms. Zero's own words and her own behaviors against her as the indisputable evidence of her lies, her distortions, of her bullying, and of her attempts at rewriting history regarding who really instigated this three-way beef. I was totally unprepared for the possibility that I was going up against someone whose whole agenda was to start pilikia, or that's Hawaiian for trouble, who was to start pilikia with certain people that she took issue with until she could goad them into a position where she could sick the cyber dogs on them. So in a sense, I had my own kernel of wisdom, a convenient target moment. Whereas I had tried to explain to her not to let this I Say This With Love character prod her into revealing herself to the public, even as I Say This With Love was doing this in hidden/protected mode herself, which is why I've been pressuring I Say This to give like for like and prove that she's not a cowardly fraud who can actually come out from hiding herself, since she deems it so blamed important that other people drop their anonymity. So, like Kernel of Wisdom, I too allowed myself to be goaded into doing something which put my activities in jeopardy. And as I had been trying to explain to Kernel of Wisdom, even as she was saying, and is correct in saying, that the way I handled the situation led to the shutdown, it was the fact that, against better judgment, it all filters back to her decision to take the bait from I Say This With Love, for had she not done so, Ms. Caramel might not have had anything to latch onto to use against her/me/us, since Kernel of Wisdom had pulled up that reminder of what Ms. 0% had said on the I Say This With Cowardice uploaded text section. But essentially what I was just trying to say was that, we both kind of like had our moments where we allowed somebody to just, get us emotional and get us riled up and poke us and prod us into doing something which was going to be detrimental. The only difference was I really didn't mind if Kernel of Wisdom was going to put herself out there like that as far as challenging somebody like that or getting it all up in somebody's face. But just do it from a position of anonymity, because you've got this coward who's maintaining their anonymity, pushing you to lower yours. And all that's going to do is just going to blow this whole mess out of proportion, and by extension, as a result of that decision-making moment, all this other stuff with Caramel and every damn body else who's decided to ride on this whole trip, that just gave them ammunition for target practice, essentially. And so I said, had it not been for that, none of this probably would have happened. Not to say that it wouldn't have, because as I revealed in one of the uploads, Caramel is just BS starter. She thrives on trying to tear people down, people who she doesn't agree with or whom she doesn't like. She's making Blake Barbie doll look sane by stark comparison. Either way, it was a learning experience for me. As I was explaining to Kernel of Wisdom, it was an extreme end to what I had already been planning. I was something like just a couple of weeks away from ending all further discussions, uploads, text comments, etc., about the miserable state of black women in America. I was hoping that one of the last vids that I had uploaded regarding how certain groups of black women are saboteurs who seek to corrupt and utterly destroy nubile, attractive, pleasant, and promising young black women such as yourself, because they're just so bitter, lonely, broken, and unloved that they would much rather keep the cycle of misery and dejection stuck in perpetuity than to just bite the bullet, take one for the team, deal with the consequences of their bad life choices, and uphold themselves as the examples not to follow, so that the next generation of black women would be able to escape the same repetitious and never-ending downfall which ruthlessly haunts our black female collective. I was hoping that that video upload would help to be the start of a transition from addressing these issues and moving on to other things, and to show in clear example who the real black women bashers truly are. So in essence, I was trying to close out the whole discussion on a question of introspection, namely, who really hates black women more? The black men who are begging black women to change their negative, disreputable behaviors and attitudes, not just for the sake of contemporary adult black men, but also and especially for the sake of our black sons, who will have a very difficult time finding quality and honorable black girls to bring home to meet the family? Or are the bigger haters the black women who encourage black women / girls to act out on their worst behaviors so that they can be avoided and rejected by not only black men, but by men in general, so that they too can grow up only to become the next wave of bitter, angry, attitudinal, miserable, and lonely old crones whom nobody wants to deal with? By their fruits ye shall know them. Close quote.